Well, good afternoon, Michiganders. It is Tuesday, September 27, 2022. And of course, this is Tuesday with Tom, Michigan's only weekly internet show where we do answer your questions about estate planning and estate settlement in Michigan. And as always, I'm your host, Tom Doyle, estate planning attorney, lifelong Michigan resident, and ambassador for all things good in this great state of Michigan. Welcome to today's program. Last week's episode, why you might need a ladybird deed. If you've got any questions about what a ladybird deed is or what they're used for, I encourage you then to listen to last week's episode to get answers to your questions. But today's show, have you set up legacy contacts for your online accounts? But please remember, what I'm about to discuss in today's program is, as always, for educational purposes only. It is certainly not intended to be legal advice. You need to work with your attorney to determine what is appropriate for you and your estate plan. Have you set up legacy contacts for your online account? So much of what we do today is online. I think at last count, I had 100 plus different passwords and usernames that I use regularly for much of the online activity that I do. And I imagine many of you, maybe you don't have as many, but certainly if you have a cell phone or a Gmail account or any other email account, you're likely doing a fair amount of activity online. Maybe you're doing your banking online, having electronic statements sent to you, etc. So you've got all of these online accounts. And the problem from an estate planning standpoint is ask yourself, how, if you died right now during the show, how would somebody be able to access that information? First question, maybe you don't want them to access information, or maybe you want them to access some of it, but not all of it. But the more that we do things online, the more it becomes important that we think about how somebody is going to be able to access those accounts for us. Think about this. You're doing banking online. You're getting electronic statements, so no paper is coming into your house from your bank whatsoever, and you die. How is anybody who's going to be responsible for settling your estate, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your children, even going to know about that bank account? Email. A lot of contact that you have with people concerns email. Certainly it could be business email, could be personal email. How is somebody going to be able to access that email in the event that there's important information coming through there? So it's important today that you give some thought to how it is you're going to give people online access to those accounts that you want them to have access to. Now, what some of you will do, what many of us will do, is we'll use a program to store passwords. I use one of those. I have a program online where I store my passwords online, and that information, that data file is available across many different platforms. So I can find it on my work computer, I can find it at my home computer, I can find it on my iPad, I can find it on my iPhone, but I use that password program to store the various usernames and passwords that go along with those various accounts that I have. But if all you do is have it online, how is somebody going to get to it? Somebody needs to know that you have it, and somebody's going to at least need to have access to the password that will get them into that account. Some of you might simply write down all of your passwords, and hopefully you're not using the same username and password for everything that you do. Prudent online activity management says use a different username, use different passwords, so if somebody gets a hold of one password, they can't get a hold of everything that you have. But many of you will write that information down. If you do, great. Make sure you update it as you change your passwords, which frequently you're going to have to do. Make sure that there's sufficient information for somebody to access it. For example, a bank account. Many bank accounts will have a secret question that they'll ask. You'll have your username, you'll enter that, you'll enter your password, and then it's going to say, hey, what was A, B, C, or D? Or maybe what was your first car? Or what was the common one? What was the first name, boyfriend or girlfriend? You're going to want to make sure you've written all that information down too, along with the password, so that somebody can fully access everything, and make sure that they can find the paper. If you're going to lock it in a safe, somebody needs to have a combination in the safe. If you're going to keep it in a drawer, somebody needs to know that it's in the drawer. So those are the kinds of things that many of us do in order to make sure that people have access to that information. Currently, though, a number of tech companies are now making it a little bit easier, not entirely easy, but a little bit easier for you to name someone who can access your account after your death. That would be somebody who would be what we would refer to as a legacy contact. Somebody who, once you've died, will have access to the information that happens to be on that platform. The big ones are going to be Apple, and whether it's your computer, your iPad, or your iPhone. The big one, Google, whether it's going to be your Android device or your Google accounts online. And probably a big one for many of you too is still going to be Facebook. Facebook is very common, although with a bunch of younger folks, they seem to be moving away from Facebook. But let's talk a little bit today about those three big ones, Apple, Google, and Facebook, and what might be available, or what is available, not might be, what is actually available for you if you want to set up a legacy contact with any of those services. So let's start with some important things, though, to consider. One, obviously, it should go without saying that you don't want to put somebody on as a legacy contact unless you trust them and you want them to be in charge. Make sure of that. It should go without saying, but sometimes people don't think about that one. They think, oh, I should do this, but is that the person that you really want to have access to it? Two, once you set these things up, things change. So revisit your settings, maybe every year, every couple of years. Maybe you make it a New Year's, thing that you do the first of every year on your birthday. Kind of make it an annual routine where you're going to go ahead and look at these different legacy contacts that you've set up, because over time, as we all know, the people that we might have contact with, the people that we might want to have access to that information could in fact change. Maybe the person we appointed died, or maybe there's been a divorce in the family, or maybe the friend that was your friend years ago isn't your friend anymore. So revisit the settings at least once a year. Make it an annual thing. 3, make sure you understand what you are actually giving them access to. Some of the services might allow you to give more access than others. Some of them might be more limited. For example, if you have an email account and you don't want someone to have access to that email account, make sure you understand that when you're setting up access, whether or not your legacy contact is going to have access to that account. Again, as I talked in the beginning of the program, have a separate backup. Maybe, again, an online password manager, etc., so that you've got all that information. And finally, and this is very important, sometimes people don't think about, inform the person that you're setting up as a legacy contact that you set them up. Make sure they know it. Because if they don't know it, if you don't tell them, how are they going to know upon your death that there is something that they are going to be able to do in assisting in the settling of your estate? So, Apple. Apple's legacy contact settings, you can set these up through your iPhone, you can set up through your iPad, you can set up through your Mac computer, as long as you're running the more recent iOS iPad iOS and Mac OS setting operations software on your devices. And if it is, all you have to do is go to Settings, tap on your name at the top, choose Password Security, and you're going to have an option for Legacy Contact. Now, if it's on your Mac, it's a little bit different. It's going to be under your Settings, Password, and Security, Legacy Contact. But in either event, that's what you're looking for. And once you go to the Digital Legacy Access page, you're now going to get an access key for that person that you are naming as your legacy contact. It's basically going to be a QR code and a string of text. Now, you have the ability, certainly if they're an Apple user, to have a copy of that sent to them, an encrypted copy sent to them as a text message. But that's only going to be available if the person you're choosing has an Apple device. Otherwise, you're going to have to print it out because they're going to need that access key in order to access your Apple data upon your death. So what's essentially going to happen is that upon your death, they're going to need that access key and they're going to need a copy of your death certificate. And there's a process for them to reach out to Apple and process it that way. With your Apple settings, they're going to have, your legacy contact's going to have a wide range of data that they have access to. And unfortunately with Apple, you can't really kind of pick and choose what data they get. They're going to get some of it, okay? And there's some of it that they're not going to get to. So one of the things, if you give them access, is they're going to access your messages, they're going to access your photos, and your files, all of which are stored in iCloud. They'll also be able to see your call history, email, health data, what's in the Notes app, your contacts, your calendars, your voicemail, Safari bookmarks, and reminders. So there's a number of things that they are going to be able to access. However, files that you purchased from Apple, like songs, albums, books, movies, that's not being included. So it's that more personal information that you've created for yourself, not those digital files, if you will, that you purchased through Apple. So some limitations with Apple, but again, pretty easy to do. Go to Settings, Password and Security, Legacy Contract, and follow the prompts from there. Google, obviously another big player. Google, fewer difference, and I guess this is going to apply if you're an Android user, you just use Google products. They do it differently. You don't actually go in and set up in advance, if you will, this legacy contact, but what you're going to do is you're going to set up your account as what they would call an inactive account manager. What is that? Well, first, Google isn't waiting for someone to contact them and try and access account. Instead, when you set up your inactive account manager, you're going to set it up so that automatically the person that you named will be notified by Google if a certain amount of time passes and you haven't used your Google product. So Google knows when you're checking your email, when you're using your Android phone, etc., and under their system, if you haven't accessed that information for a certain amount of time, Google is assuming at that point in time that you probably passed away. And then at that point in time, Google will contact the individual to let them know and see if they are going to be accessing your information. Google lets you pick, unlike Apple, what data categories will be available to your backup contact. I think there's I saw about 52 different options. So it's a lot of different options like contacts or photos, But a lot of different options. You're going to be able to pick and choose, if you will, what you're going to want your inactive account manager to be able to access for you, unlike Apple, that somewhat limits that stuff that's available for them as well. You can also set it up so that there will be an automatic email should your account ever become inactive. That would be an automatic email that goes to the person that you've named as your inactive account manager. So, kind of straightforward under Google, a little bit different than Apple, but you'll go onto your device and you will choose the configuration service, if you will, and gives you the access in order to set up your inactive account manager on your Google device. Facebook, another one of the big three. Facebook does it a little bit differently. What Facebook is going to do is they offer you the option to have what's called a memorialized Facebook page. That means nobody can add to your page, but your page will still be there so that other people will be able to see your page. In addition, the person that you have designated will have the ability to download a backup of your Facebook data. That would include your photos and profile information, but it's not going to include your messages. So the idea is that your Facebook page will become memorialized, and then the person that you've designated as having access as your legacy contact will be able to download certain information from that Facebook page, and certainly photos being an important one, because that's what probably most people are really interested in. Is I've got all these photos of families and friends that have been out on Facebook, and maybe I want someone to be able to have access to those. Facebook legacy contact, you're going to go to your settings and your settings and privacy, choose settings, choose general, and then choose the memorialization settings. There is also, if you wish to take advantage of it, an option to simply have Facebook delete your account if you die, but obviously somebody's going to have to inform Facebook of your death. So those are basically the big three. There may be a lot of other accounts out there, and every company is going to handle this a bit differently. Obviously, just these three companies alone that we talked about today, Apple, Google, and Facebook, all handle it a little bit differently. Another consideration, in Michigan, if you don't have in your trust agreement, if you have a trust, or in your will, if you have a will, if you haven't had language added to those documents authorizing somebody to access your digital information, you're going to want to do that to make sure that it complies with what Michigan law provides for somebody who is settling your estate to be able to access that data. So that's not the same thing as what Apple's letting you do, or Google's letting you do, or Facebook's letting you do. State of Michigan has legislation, discusses access to digital assets after your death. You're simply going to want to make sure that your estate planning documents have the appropriate information in them so that your trustee, if it's a trust that's being settled for you, or your personal representative under your will, is going to have the authority that they need, because you likely have more than just Google, or more than just Apple, or more than just Facebook, and maybe you haven't set anything up. Even with those, you want to make sure that the person settling your estate is going to have appropriate access to what they need. Well, obviously, Amanda and I would be honored if you need to update your estate planning documents to have that sort of language added to them, whether it's documents that we had prepared for you years ago before we were including that language or other documents. Please reach out to us. We would be honored to help. We're here, obviously, to help you protect your loved ones by updating your estate plan, creating a new estate plan if you don't already have one, or certainly available to assist your loved ones in settling your estate. Please reach out to us at the virtual office, which you'll find at doylelawpc.com. There, again, if you're a prospective client, we give you options, and existing clients on how much of what we do can all be done from home today. We've used Zoom calls and telephone calls. If you're a new client, we give you our free estate planning guidebook that you can download. We give you a web page where you can upload the information to us, et cetera, and we give you links on how it is that you can set up a consultation with Amanda or myself, either a Zoom call or a telephone call. Maybe you're looking just for an individual document. Maybe all you need is a new power of attorney for finances. Check out the legal store. Again, that's at Doyle Law PC. There you're going to find individual documents that are available, oftentimes that can be ordered and delivered to you without the need for a consultation, but we'll make that determination on a case-by-case basis. Well, that's going to be it for today's show. As always, if you have a comment about the program, perhaps a topic that you'd like to have me discuss, questions that you'd like to have answered, please send me an email, tom@tuesdaywithtom.com, or you can always mail me a postcard, Tom Doyle, P.O. Box 3752, Grand Rapids, Michigan 49501. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Tuesday with Tom. Follow the office as well at Doyle Law PC, and invite your friends and family to follow along as well. Remember, too, that the program is available on many services where you are likely listening to your podcast now. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, a number of other podcast services available out there are carrying the podcast. As always, too, you can always ask your smart speaker to play Tuesday with Tom. Well, thank you again for spending some of your time with us today. As always, I hope that you have an awesome day and an awesome week in Michigan. Stay safe. Tuesday with Tom has been brought to you by the estate planning attorneys at Doyle Law PC. To learn how we can help you with your estate plan or with settling a loved one's estate, please call us today at 517-323-7366. That's 517-323-7366.